So hi, Kayden is with me today. Kayden is one of my dearest friends. Hi, Kayden.
Hello.
He's also, unbeknownst to me, a celebrated porn performer and one of our community's greatest sex symbols. Better known to me, he is a great activist, one of the greatest I've known, to be honest. And that's one of the reasons we're talking about today, because he's combined those two things in a project called
UEFU. Yes.
Tell us about that.
The title itself, the project.
Let's start with the title.
Okay, so when you break it down, UEFU means, it stands for U equals fucking you. And I kind of purposely didn't break it down because I've learned through activism that people, when they're in the mood for a moment to look at something, you know, like activisty, they do, and then they disengage very quickly. So I didn't want people to think, oh, this is going to be an HIV film, because you know, I've done so much other HIV oriented stuff that wasn't very sexy, and so I just really wanted to lead with the sex. But when you do break it down, U equals fucking you obviously stands for undetectable equals fucking untransmittable, which is it's a testimony to U equals you, the international phenomenon of U equals you. And I also wanted to, I think, I wanted it to express the urgency of this message, because 40 years, you know, since the outbreak of the epidemic in the United States and Europe, like half of the British population still don't know how HIV is transmitted. They don't understand that you can be on treatment and not pass on the HIV, you know, the virus.
So what is U equals you for those that have never heard of it?
U equals you stands for undetectable equals untransmittable. It means that if you are living with an HIV, with HIV and on effective treatment, your virus goes down to such a low level that you can't transmit it sexually, and that makes you, yeah, that's what untransmittable means.
So someone can have sex with you as an HIV positive person, and even if you don't wear a condom, they will not catch it from you.
They never will catch it from me, which is kind of why I really wanted to bring that into porn, so that you can see it, because that's literally what happened. U equals you was the only method of prevention, HIV prevention, used in this project.
Okay, we're going to, most of this, the reason we're doing this is because of this film, and we'll get to it in more detail. I should let you, I gave you a brief introduction to who you are. I was at your house once and I saw all these really, really shiny awards on a beautiful shelf in your bathroom. What are they?
They are just some trinkets.
You are a celebrated porn performer.
I suppose it depends who you ask, because, you know, everyone likes different things. I definitely have been, sometimes more than others. I'm very grateful for that as well. I do have a trusty fan base, a growing fan base, which is great, given that I started doing that 8 years ago, and I have changed, and lots of things in my life have changed. So that's actually pretty amazing. And also, I think what ties into this, like who you ask, a lot of people would have never heard about me because they never watch condom porn. So I've been missing out the entire time, you know, not filming. Was this you or me? Not filming condomless porn. Excuse me.
Okay, so condomless porn was it's a genre, and you had never done a bareback scene in porn performing.
Never done it until a UEFU, and I do have condomless sex, bareback sex, and I love it. And it's not that I would encourage people to do it. I think if you're gonna BB, you need to know your shit. So you need to know all the tools, vaccines, testing, PrEP, U equals you. You need to know about window periods. You need to know about STIs, all of that. and own your sexual health. And then, I mean, I feel comfortable doing it if someone else isn't. That's how I feel.
So it's about conversations that happen between two people or more having sex in that moment. It's quite often it's about that conversation that happens in that moment.
That's it. And I think some of them happen in that moment. That's not my favorite because it can be a mood killer. I think those conversations should really be had in advance, but we don't, a lot of the time we don't have the audacity. We think it's not, you know, someone's gonna go off us, or it's not gonna be sexy if we talk about sexual health. And so even more so, should it happen in bed or like when you're having sex, would you really not rather to have that conversation in advance? But then I suppose some people might think that you're not going to hook up and stuff. So
I think, yes, I would, but we are living in a world where people are, sex is complicated, and sometimes you're in bed with someone not prepared. Maybe you don't know all the facts. Maybe these letters like U equals U doesn't mean anything to you just because you've seen it everywhere in every gay bar, and you do need someone to explain it to you. Maybe you've been receptive to all of the HIV awareness messages for a decade, from the charities, from the messages on the condoms that you use, from the bars you walk into, but you keep finding yourself in bed with someone and something weird and clumsy is going on and you don't know how to communicate it. Mm. And what I like about your film,
nail on the head. Yeah,
yeah, your film is which you'll get the opportunity to watch, is it's not just porn. It has those messages in them, but they're not just stop the sex so we can see this banner from the gay charity that says this is how to not catch HIV. It actually shows those clumsy conversations, right? You wrote those into the scene.
I did, and that's what took longest. Yeah, I never kind of thought. I mean, for a while, I thought that I need to sex up my activism because, I mean, a lot of activism is just barren, and we're talking about sex, and people are not associating what we're saying with what they do in the moment, right? And I don't mean to obviously demean anyone who is more conservative. I understand it. We live in a pretty conservative world, but I think we need to break those boundaries and create and bring those messages into the porn, like into the sex space. But it was tricky with this because, I mean, how do you do it? I think this is an experimental piece. How do you do it so that you don't ruin the experience for people? And I think for some people, they're going to appreciate it. Some people probably hate it, and some people probably do hate it. But I think there's been a lot of people who appreciated it, but I don't know exactly how horny it got them. Did they get off? Some people I know did, but I don't know what the ratio is. So maybe, you know, I'll just need to do a few more until I get the hang of it.
For those that haven't seen it yet, and I think you can jump to the end of this film to see a suitable for work version of it. And there'll be links to your film, but it is a film that is it porn? Because I believe it has merit as just a standalone porn film, or is that merit ruined because you're talking about HIV and having complicated conversations, not just about HIV, but you're having sex in the film with someone who isn't that, there's been some stigmas that are preventing him from hearing HIV prevention messages, and they're in the room with you and with him, and you're also in bed, and there are some words that are being fetishized to do with, I mean, the word faggot is used, which I can say. There are other words that I don't know, probably can't be used, but there are fetishization of words that come up mid-sex that make people feel a certain way, and they were written into the scene too. So, I mean, I don't know. You go on.
They were, but although not in the same fashion, I tried to avoid fetishizing anything, including HIV, in this film, because I think that could be easily done. And even though I tried my best, some people still find it like kinky. But there are some homophobic slurs.
Give us the sentence about that is used about pos me up or something like that. Something which we all hear every day on Grindr and in our porn. Tell us about that.
So do you hear that?
I'm not as out there as some others, but Yeah, I do. Pos me up is too familiar to me. It shouldn't be. It's revolting, but it's really familiar to me. So yeah, it's out there. It's in my face, and I'm not getting it from HIV awareness charities. I'm getting it from the porn I watch and my engagement and the sexual arena.
So now I've never seen it in porn, but that's been said to me so many times. And I was advised against using that phrase in the film because it's very out there. And I mean, it's like it goes bang in the middle. And you're like, whoa. But I think the woes mainly, not only as I've learned, but mainly come from people who are HIV negative and would rather not think about HIV at all. Right. Just rather it doesn't exist, right? Uncomfortable. But we don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. I live with HIV. The people literally say that shit to me, not on a daily basis, but fairly often. And this has been clients in the past, like when I escort, and this has been just people on Grindr. And I don't think everyone means give me HIV. I think it's some sort of an expression of intimacy, kind of like having a baby with someone, put those babies in me, right? Like Ariana Grande recently wrote a song and she's like, just give me them babies. Right. And she doesn't want to get pregnant, pretty sure. But she says it because of, that's centered in heteronormative relationships. And for us, it's been HIV, whether we like it or not. And so we get that people basically just, maybe it's defying this thing that's been looming over our community for so long as well, like taking ownership.
In my own memory, when I was, I'm talking about the early 90s, when I was having sex and there was no treatment for it, and it was quite common that to either not talk about it at all, or if it had to be talked about, finding someone else who was also HIV positive and not having to use condoms because you were both positive, we were both going to die within the year or two anyway. So nothing really mattered. And there was such an intimacy in saying, your disease, you don't have to protect, I don't have to protect myself from your disease. Isn't that nice? And like, yes, it is. It really is nice. And I don't know how else it manifests since then, but it is part of our life. Because I'm an addictions worker, so there's a part of our brain which is engaged in a very different way. We've got our cognitive brain, which is logical. It absorbs logic, it joins dots, and it can reflect back on the past, and it can absorb learning. But then there's another part of our brain, which is kind of our Darwinian part, about survival, and it's dopamine related and adrenaline related, and it's very much engaged when you're having a drug craving, and it's very much engaged when you're horny, and it kind of rules out logic in that moment. Right. So this is why your film is really interesting, because you are trying to engage people in messaging and awareness while they are in this other mental state, which is very Darwinian and primal, which a lot of, there's going to be a lot of psychosexual therapists sort of watching this who love this stuff, who haven't figured out any of this out yet. Can you educate someone while they're in that strange state of mind? And of course, when someone is in that aroused state of mind, they can say things like pos me up without thinking cognitively about what that actually means. And do we need to connect those two? Are you allowed to just be horny and say the wrong thing?
That's you actually just made me think about that for the first time that deeply, which you do so well. I suppose when I communicate with people over messages, I am not in that state. I'm never in that. I feel like people deserve the social me, because I don't know who's on the other side. And I don't want, I think you can objectify people, you can jerk in the face. All of this is cool as long as they've consented. But before you've actually met someone, it doesn't, or like sending nudes to someone. So I'm a little bit not skeptical. I don't invite those very, very much, but I understand what you're saying.
They happen. It happened in your film.
People are in this. Sorry?
It happened in
your
film.
It does. Exactly,
he says something in a moment of arousal that needs to be addressed because you are cognitively there as well.
That's, of course, you're talking about the scene, and I was thinking about messaging, talking to people online and so on, which is what my experience is. No one has actually said it to me without my consent to my face.
Okay.
That's not true. Actually, they did. But not while I was having sex, it was before. Would you reiterate the question, please? Because I've lost my train of thought.
I interrupted you, so it was me that was wrong.
I was going in the wrong direction.
We find ourselves in bed often,
yeah,
and you're in a situation suddenly where you can't access your cognitive memory of what your doctor told you in the HIV clinic last week, where you can't access your memory of how do I say, oh, but I'm undetectable, so I'm not giving you a killer virus by having sex like this. How do you say that to someone when you've been smiling and joking and had a few drinks and you're feeling very intimate, and then that comes up and you can't access that language? You wrote that into this film.
Right. It's such a difficult thing to say. And I don't think there's a right thing to say it. If that's what you're asking me. Like,
you did in the film. I think somebody said, pause me up, and you wanted to stop the moment and just make sure that you didn't want to carry on with that fantasy without it being sure that you were comfortable in your conscience of what was happening.
Right. And I think I would have loved to think that, you know, throughout the 8 years that I've been positive, I could have done that, but a lot of the time I didn't have the language, I didn't have the audacity to say anything when things like that would happen or similar. And in this moment, obviously, I feel like it's handled pretty well, and it turns into fun. So, like, I make him say that I'm undetectable. I dom him into submission, and I think it's very powerful that I force him to adopt this message, because this isn't just the prevention thing. This is you equals you. You know, the fact that we can be undetectable it is a matter of not just life and death, but quality of life. And equality, you know, it's a chance for us to actually be equal. So I make him say that, and I think that's very powerful. But I worked on that for a long time. So if anyone, you know, has been in situations where this has happened and they couldn't come up with something to say, and it didn't feel like it could turn into fun, that's fine. That's okay, because it really did take me a lot of thinking and soul searching to write that piece, and also decide when it's gonna happen in the.
There's a moment when the guy you're having sex with, there's such a misunderstanding. I think Bishop. A condom breaks or something, Bishop. And there's a moment when he storms out of the house or leaves or something. And we all know what it's like to get blocked after an awkward conversation in bed or something's gone wrong. And you're standing outside in the rain, or even it's the next day or the week after, and you're just feeling like this incredibly potentially nice, that was nice for a period, ended so abruptly and yuck. Your film also goes there. How do you fix that moment? Can you tell us all about that moment that he is having?
I think a lot of the time you can't fix that moment straight away. From my experience, people need time to grow. They need walking time. They need to also not hear it from you. They need to not hear it from you, which is why we introduced a third character into the story. Because originally
a condom breaks, is that right?
Yeah. Condom breaks.
On from there.
Sorry?
And he becomes very frightened?
He freaks out. And I kind of had a feeling, as a character, I had a feeling that was going to happen because he asked me if I was clean. Anyone who asks you if you're clean doesn't know much about sexual well-being, period, right? So then before we kiss, you see me go, I was about to say something. I was like, look, and then he just went in for a kiss. And that was a moment also, obviously, that you won't know this watching it. You might think that, and it was intended as, I'm about to tell you this. I was trying to tell him this again, because I wanted to start with that. And I feel like we didn't get, you know, the chance. And so 2 of those moments now have happened. And so when the condom breaks and I pull out and there's basically a cream pie, his face changes, and Bishop held that so beautifully because his face just, he sees me as a predator immediately, and he asks me if I'm clean again, and this time I'm like, I know what you mean, and I'm HIV positive. I mean, you know, it is what it is.
Watching this who don't really know why clean. There's lots of people who identify as addicts in my community who use the word clean in regard to their addiction in a way that is entirely ownership. So explain to us why clean can be misunderstood.
So I think like even in addiction, the word clean is slightly derogatory because it insists that sobriety rather than investigating, like taking personal inventory, is the ultimate answer to being happy when the whole world is on something, right? Like on something in one way or another. But when it comes to HIV, the word clean is a exclusionary, elitist, almost like word, which it doesn't just mean free of STIs, it means the preferred kind of moral high ground, because you haven't been a dirty slut taking loads in the sauna, right? Which is what you would have done to get this awful disease that you deserved. So yeah, I feel like clean, people will say without meaning. People say because the culture has groomed them to do so. That's how we look at STIs and sexual health, right? And HIV. But yes, it's not an appropriate term to use.
The opposite of clean is dirty, and that's an unpleasant thing to apply to a person who is either using drugs or alcohol or has an STI of any kind.
Right, exactly. And this is why I named the first part dirty with a question mark, because I mean that is the answer. That is the ultimate antonym to clean, right? Which is what a lot of people seem to aspire to, and I think that's great. But in the real world, like in practice, almost no one is clean if we're talking STIs. If we're talking, having no STIs, most of adult sexually active adults have herpes and or HPV, and you don't even get tested for that. Standard tests don't cover it because it's inevitable. Largely, I mean, you can get an HPV vaccine, but you can't vaccinate for herpes. They don't check you for herpes. Like I have herpes, and I had to insist to be diagnosed with herpes. I'm like, I have herpes, time to diagnose me. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. But I had it for years and years and years, and I was never diagnosed, and I had breakouts.
So Bishop, the condom breaks. There's an awkward conversation. He leaves, and he's standing out in the rain, and you're feeling yuck, and he's feeling yuck on the other side of a blocked app. What happens?
I wouldn't want to tell exactly what happens because I wouldn't like to
ruin the plot.
Ruin the plot, because I think that's the climactic moment.
There's an angel appear from the heavens with a beautifully delivered message
in a massive wig and huge eyelashes by the name of Bianca Del Rio. Yes, that angel, and she turns it around, but and this is it. And I think it's kind of obvious, what happens. Obviously, what would never work if I delivered it, because I've just had sex with him. He has now completely seen me in a different light because of his own fear. He thinks I'm trying to give him AIDS, quote unquote, right? Yeah. Which is how he refers to HIV as well. Okay. And me saying nothing, I'm like, what about if, it doesn't matter what I say anymore. It doesn't matter what you say. People will leave. People will. And there are lots of situations where people might be violent towards you, which is why I think it's really problematic. Can be a dangerous situation. But yeah, there's nothing I could have done. And so we introduced this miracle kind of fantasy that I've always had. I've always wanted someone with a lot of power and strength and conviction and just assertive, and someone people trust, who's not HIV positive, to be like, bitch, you equals you. Chill out, sit down, have a cup of tea, have chamomile, right? You need to calm down. So that's why, I wrote Bianca into this. Ed, actually, the director from Old Shift, he said, I don't think it's going to work as well as you think if you tell him. And so I was like, yeah, based on my experience, actually, it never does. So yeah, there she
Is
comes.
it a great moment for someone who is trying very hard not to watch it as a porn film, because you're my friend,
Yeah.
And also watching it with my activism angle. It was so gorgeous to see Bianca come up, and what you care about very much, Kayden, and I do too, is that there have been decades of awareness messages around HIV and AIDS that are still not getting through, and we need to deliver them in arenas which are sex arenas, like where you work, and in the porn performance industry, and where people are watching porn while they're in that headspace. Yes. And they need to come from our community heroes, people with that kind of clout, more so than from the charities and the messages that we're getting from the charities and on billboards and on our condom packets and things like that.
Absolutely. And this is it. Like, we can wait indefinitely. I feel like we should still apply pressure to the health and educational systems to actually take this seriously, finally take this shit seriously, because it's been like, this is a public health issue, right? This is an urgent message that affects everyone's life, because you're either living with HIV and you're being stigmatized, or you are not, and potentially you're not educated and you're always fearing it. But obviously that's not going to happen overnight. So we do need to explore those different arenas. And I just wanted to say, there are two versions of it. And I just uploaded, literally just published the Safe for Work version on YouTube today of both. There's a little from set, like something from set as well, a video from set. And I'm uploading a new one.
From set, sorry, from what?
From set of the film. There's like a little 2-minute video as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also working on I think this is going to be probably about a half an hour, like mini doc with the cast and crew, and talking about exactly like what we're talking about now.
Good, this is good, because I do want to, I'm very curious to see your co-star Bishop's perceptions of all of this, because I bought the character entirely. It's important, I think, that the character was played by a Black gay man, and this is really potent too, because that's Black gay men are disproportionately affected by stigma in regard to these messages. Right. Important to know that the medicine in regard to HIV prevention, HIV management, work exactly the same in Black gay men as they do in other people. It always works, but the stigma there's within the communities of accessing those messages and being able to go to clinics around the world makes them a very, very vulnerable group. So it's really, really brilliant that and appropriate that this person that you're having sex with that isn't as well skilled as you in HIV awareness is struggling with those messages.
Do some people think that it may work differently depending on race?
Yeah, so we're getting that with the vaccines now. There are communities who don't believe that the COVID vaccine will work as well in groups, and there's there are many Black communities and other communities that have been historically used really badly in research. There's some very famous research in regard to sexual health and syphilis, where Black populations were used without any ethics as experiments, like let's deliberately infect these people with it. And in many cultures, they've been outside of the respect of white medicine, and a lot of them actually don't believe that medicine works so well in them. It's very prevalent now with COVID, and it is a part of why many Black gay men or their families don't trust the HIV messages or medicine that we're getting from white institutional medicine.
Yeah. They've been left out of lots of campaigns as well, like even here in the UK, right? The first couple of decades. Well, until
like America. You know the stats for American Black gay men? 1 in 2 chance of becoming HIV positive within their lifetime.
Is this Atlanta or
I don't know.
Anywhere?
I thought you might know, but it's something like that, and it's awful, really, really bad. So I mean, I
think that's definitely in Atlanta. That's what it looks like, and compare that to a white man who has sex with men. That's 1 in 17. That's the discrepancy between access to healthcare, and also like the states, like in London, we have about 2-3% of people who aren't accessing the medication, while in the States it's like 50%. It's insane. Like I don't know. PrEP
uptake was slowest among that group, and it's really good. I'm really curious to hear Bishop's perception of playing that role of the Black gay man who is less aware of HIV messages in that situation, where he might not be trusting, the character might not be trusting of the messages he's seen on the condom packets, and needs a human being in the bedroom to guide him through it. And that's what happens. And so for me, that's the most important, brilliant part, the artistry of this project, is that no amount of education helps you when you're horny and rejected and confused and you don't have the skills to end it. I'm talking about bedroom skills, basically. I remember as a younger man going to bed with someone after having too many drinks at a bar, and I'd wake up next to them and I can't remember their name. And at some point, because I'm in their house, I have to tell them that I can't remember the name because it just becomes obvious. We might disagree about Margaret Thatcher, but I have to have the communication skills to resolve this conflict because I'm being polite. I haven't figured out if I ever want to see him again or if I want to give him my number. He's doing the same thing. I don't know what he wants. We both want to be gone because we got hangovers, but we have to have communication skills to navigate all of those things before I leave his house that morning. And hookup culture and apps have robbed a lot of us gay men of those communication skills that we learnt in the morning after, because we can just block and just block and block. So in a period of, we do. So when there's a period of, having sex is so complicated and dangerous in regard to HIV and HIV messages and understanding it, and if liking and trusting the person with you is so fraught with distrust because you don't understand the messages that you hear from the charities are much less important. And having a film like yours, where that conflict resolution skills in the bedroom, in the moment, are delivered for you on screen to learn from. This is the magic of it for me. And you wrote all that into it beautifully.
Thank you so much. Can I just circle back to something? We were talking about Bishop. I think it's important to say, because from what I have gathered, I've been gathering feedback, and some people saw this as a stereotype, a white guy teaching a black guy who's ignorant about HIV. And I obviously, that was, first of all, I think I want to say that this was unintended. Like, it could have been a white guy I'm teaching. I was always going to be the one teaching, right? But like you said, it was really important to me that this film isn't lost on any communities, especially those who are most affected by HIV. And so it had to be a black man. But on top of that, Bishop is actually very well educated on this. And this is exactly what has allowed him to trust me enough to not be on prep for the time of the filming, which was never a requirement, but it is something that I put on the table, because I thought that this film could be more than just a theoretical, activist piece. It could be actual testimony. Like, this is what we're doing. I'm undetectable. He's not on prep. No one's catching HIV. You need to see that, I think, for a lot of people, right? To believe it.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I want to jump in with two things. One, firstly, is that you'll agree we're two white men talking about sort of race and the black man's perspective without anyone here. But so we apologize. Do respond and educate us in the feedback, and we're going to get Bishop to come and talk about this stuff too, right? When you do the from set stuff.
So I have asked Bishop to film himself talking about this, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about the journey. Because getting off PrEP, which is your, I imagine for anyone who's HIV negative, that's a big deal if you don't have sufficient trust. And even if you do, you may have, thoughts, emotions accompanying that decision. So I'm really looking forward to hearing that and sharing that.
I am too. This is a part of the film, if you haven't watched it yet, is Kayden's character is HIV positive and on treatment, so uninfectious. U equals U, uninfectious. And that means he can't pass HIV on to anybody. He's having sex with someone who is not on PrEP. The character is, all right? A PrEP is a medicine that HIV negative people take, which absolutely guarantees that you won't catch HIV from a person who is infectious with HIV. So this was a situation where a person with HIV but uninfectious was having sex with someone who was having no PrEP protection against HIV at all. So it meant he had to completely trust that you were uninfectious. And
right, exactly. Yeah.
So this is one of the landmark parts of the film, right? It's actually demonstrating the lack of risk, where people don't always trust that risk element.
Yeah, and celebrating something that's really, for understandable reasons, frowned upon and scrutinized, which is condomless sex. But it is, it's not treated the same way among straight people, because contraception and morning after pill, all of that has been funded, and PrEP is only just catching up. So we're at that stage now where I think we need to. Condomless sex is beautiful. It's great. Obviously, comes with risks, so you need to know like I said before, you need to know your stuff. But I just really wanted for that to be a celebration of that, of U equals U, of that amazing phenomenon that means that we actually get to be equal.
It is. You're talking to a 54-year-old gay man that has had AIDS 30 years ago. Now is HIV positive and uninfectious, and it's hard for someone of my generation to get past that messaging, to just have faith in the fact that I can have sex with my lover without a condom, and all of that panic and fear that used to be associated with that condomless experience doesn't need to be there. It's hard to shake it off. It is hard to shake it off,
right?
Not just for me too, but I think I've told you this, Kayden. I was traveling and talking to a group of nurses, sexual health and HIV nurses. One of them was a lesbian. So in an audience, there was a lesbian who was 10, 20, 30 years working with HIV and sexual health, working in that sector, and a nurse. So she understood medicine. And I was asking everyone in the room, I'm HIV positive, I'm uninfectious. Would you let me come inside you? And I wanted to see the reactions on the faces in front of me from these people who were not ensconced in the gay world, but they did understand that my come inside them is not a risk in regard to HIV at all, and how they felt about that. And even that one nurse who really understood that she could not catch HIV from me, even if I came inside her, she was like, oh yes, but it would make me feel funny though, what her response was. And I get that because I'm of that generation.
Right. So it's good to hear you've struggled with that, because this isn't something that I just I've been shouting about it online, but there's been an element of doubt as well. Even though the science covers it, but there's I have this habit of thinking that I'm infectious, and that's something that I've needed to work through, like long before even this movie was on the table. It was good to hear that you.
Yeah, it was important that you knew. It's important to healthcare organisations that you knew that you presented a risk to others, in regard to public health. But doing that in a way where you could lift it off when the time was right and not have to carry a stigma with you, even way beyond, that wasn't done very well. And we're all coming to terms with that at different stages and at different paces of getting ready to. It's like
I think it's because it was used alongside just the oppression of our communities. And this was kind of used by, I don't believe that all healthcare providers or even most intended for that, and there are lots of well-meaning people that just wanted to protect us. But I think that the homophobia was at the core of a lot of it, of how it was handled, and that's still. I mean, I know you feel it, and I wasn't even there then, but I feel it.
And slut shaming too, only dirty sluts got HIV, except for the good HIV, the haemophiliacs. But it was this dirty slutty ones.
Good HIV.
And my cum will never be clean, no matter what medicine is invented.
Right. So maybe there's no hope for us to ever not think that. But I think the younger generations deserve a world when HIV, having HIV, you don't feel like you're dirty, because you're not.
Well, this is at the
Just
core of
highlight
your
it.
activism. As your greatest fan in regard to HIV activism, and I truly am, you know this, you reinvent the messages, and you have been since you've been doing this. You've been reinventing the messages that have been delivered almost like as a diatribe from our communities, well-meaning communities, reinventing them for your audience, because you've always had a very sex positive audience. You've also had a very sex ignorant audience. You know, people who watch porn can sometimes separate the cognitive part, which absorbs good messaging and cares about themselves and others, from the horny part that doesn't give a fuck and is just one horny, and this isn't real life. And you've had to walk the line between those two attitudes.
Clumsily, most of the time, because I feel like I have a chip on my shoulder because of it, because obviously I started doing porn, expose myself to all of that objectification, but I actually don't want to be seen as a thing. I mean, do it in your, like, watch my porn, sure, pay for it first of all, but watch it and knock yourself out, literally, just have a good time. But I don't like people jerking in my face, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, it's not always been a smooth ride. I still get quite upset sometimes.
Because your identity and your fame and your self-esteem for many, many years, as well as your livelihood, your money that pays your rent, was dependent on people, your fans, who wanted you to be a certain sexy character. And a lot of them did not want you in that part of their fantasy brain to be HIV positive. They really didn't.
Sure, for sure. Or even to just have feelings and opinions and not always be fun to look at and listen to. You know, just, you know, not this hunk that you can just come all over, who'll destroy you, who'll dumb you because he's a, you know, badass bitch.
Well, your film is trying to marry those two things, because your film is horny, so it is a porn film. It's also delivering the messages, but not like a banner that appears next to the bed, not like a doctor telling you the definition of what uninfectious means and viral loads. It's actually a human being saying, you can't catch it from me, in the same tone of voice that he's saying all the other sexy things, and in the same genre. So while the viewer is in that aroused headspace. So, you know, I'm an educator, you are too, so you know that you can't teach someone's not receptive. When someone is relaxed and receptive, in the golden rule of drugs education is you never deliver a message unless someone gives you consent to do so first, because they won't learn. So if you've got an audience, if you've got a classroom full of people that want to learn about how drugs might be harmful and joyful, and you can't tell them that the drugs are harmful unless they want to know it. And so you have to create an environment where the person is receptive to learning and has asked, I want to learn this. I want you to give me harm reduction information. It's the same in education. So if you've got a whole lot of people wanking at a computer or even in bed with someone else, and the messages are coming from the health sector, which is so separate from your horny, aroused life, and you haven't given consent to that message, which ruins your sex life, to come at you, what you're doing in this arena is combining horniness and the horny brain with the message delivered differently and intimately and sexily and clumsily and friendly. And with the help of Bianca Del Rio, we all need a drag queen in bed with us.
For sure.
It's a tough job. It hasn't been done before.
And I think it does. I don't think that I necessarily got people's consent to show them this, but I think it's done. It's a little Machiavellian, I guess, because, you know, it's a bit of a trick, if you like, because I think it deserves to be in that space, and people need that information, whether they like it or not, for their own sexual and mental well-being. So I think just done gently, hopefully they can absorb it better, like you say. You know, when
another component, another important component of education is challenging people. So I mean, we can be closed off to new messages too, and a really good educator will challenge. The really good educator will not challenge too much. It will challenge in a way where you're hoping that a person is receptive and susceptible to information, pushing just a bit, but not enough to scare them away. As a drugs worker, when I've got someone in the room with me who is scared to make changes, needing to, wanting to, but not wanting to at the same time, ambivalent and in denial, and ready to walk out at any minute. I'm always playing a game of dancing with them rather than wrestling with them. Giving them permission to be confused about these things, giving them permission to change their mind at any given moment in this half-hour consultation. But just keeping them in the room and receptive to messages and learning, because they're frightened and a part of the brain wants to walk out and slam the door and not learn. And they don't even like that part of them. I think what you're doing in this film is a similar thing. There are people that might want to slam their computer things shut as soon as you start talking about U equals U. But you've challenged them to keep it open by keeping it sexy, by keeping it conversational. And I think people who are watching it can say, oh my God, that's happened to me like 100 times when I've walked out and slammed the door, or said this weird thing, which I should have said in the moment and I probably shouldn't have said, but I didn't have the communication skills to fix it and stay in the room. These are those conversational elements that are written into your film are really beautiful for me, because it's like learning on site. You know, it's learning and how to have a comeback sentence when you've just said the stupidest thing in the world and you know you have, and you pissed the other person off and nobody taught you how to fix that. You're teaching them.
I love that you say it this way, because as an educator, I'm very temperamental in general, and I don't always have the patience. And also in private, I sometimes do wrestle people to the ground. So this is obviously a kind of version of that, and I'm glad you think that I achieved that, that we achieved that. You
did achieve that. I'm sure you did. I want people to see it. So this is a porn film that nobody has to pay for. It's free.
Yeah, it's free.
UEFU.
UEFU.
And I'm going to have some links where people can see it. So I'm going to be showing people the suitable for work version. But where can people see the full you in your own full glory?
Yeah. So actually, both of those, if you can just use one link, my link tree, which is both in my bio on Twitter and my Instagram, and there you have split into both episodes, the not safe for work with an 18 sign on it, and then underneath it, safe for work, SFW version of it's all on that menu. And then also down the menu, there's also the full video with Bianca, only part of which is used for this film.
Yeah. Great. I will provide all of those links. I do recommend anyone that's interested that's had a sexy conversation that went wrong to watch it. Anyone that delivers messages to watch it. And anyone, I think, that just likes a good wank should watch it too, probably, because it's porn, right?
Or just some, good gay drama.
Yes. I'm really looking forward to hearing Bishop's version of things. And also, as we come to an end, what haven't I brought up that you really want to deliver about this? What made you do it?
What made me do it? Oh, I'm an HIV positive sex worker who has been one way or another. I've had my status has been an issue, and also it's been largely, the conversation is largely uninvited from sexual space, and porn is the epitome of that. Despite obviously lots of companies now lots of companies were supportive, back then already, but I've also been rejected by companies who would do bareback porn, and so I never did. I never wanted to do bareback, and I didn't want to do bareback because I was scared about exposure. I didn't want to be exposed, and also then when I started working for Impulse, I realized that the global state of healthcare is in a pretty bad state, and lots of people who have access to porn don't have like basic shit like the medication that I've got, don't have testing, don't have PrEP, don't have PEP. So they are actually like, I get to have sex. I'm very privileged to get to have sex without a condom, not passing HIV, not facing AIDS, but that's not the reality for a lot of people. So I wanted to make sure that they see a condom. But I was missing out work-wise, as well as people weren't engaging with me because they saw me as this condom guy. And also the side effect of me only wearing a condom in porn was that a lot of people saw that as contradicting E equals U.
Okay.
They saw it as me trying to prevent HIV transmission, so I felt like I needed to make a statement. And basically just all of these things came together.
But you are preventing HIV transmission just by taking your medicines daily.
Right, exactly. Rather than, you know, I think this is very important to say. Condoms do offer protection, of course. But there are lots of other tools, and U equals U is one of them. And it is, we've never seen it fail. So.
Okay, we all
U
heard
equals
that.
fucking
You equals fucking you. Again and again. Kayden, thanks for chatting to me today and explaining all of this stuff. Thanks for doing this film.
Thank you.
I have seen all those awards on your shelves, and I really hope, I do believe you'll get a different kind of award someday for this brilliant activism that you're doing and delivering these messages in such creative and sexy ways that we need. Thank you for all that you do.
That's sweet. That's sweet. But I mean, it would be great. I'm not the kind of, you know, I'm insecure enough to not be satisfied with just being nominated. But so it would be wonderful. But I do get really rewarding messages on a regular basis from people who have seen the film and they, you know, they appreciate my work. So that actually is really gratifying in itself. I don't think I really need an award, but it would look great.
It would look good. But yeah, it is. It's extraordinary.
Well, let's go.
Thank you, friend.
Please see the film.